Commander Taemin stood on the bridge of the UES Dauntless, watching the stars drift past the viewing screen. His ship patrolled the outer edges of human space, far beyond where most people lived. Out here, near the frozen rocks of the Kuiper Belt, everything was quiet. Too quiet, he sometimes thought. "Anything on sensors, Hana?" he asked his tactical officer. Hana looked up from her station, her fingers dancing across the control panel. She frowned slightly. "Nothing unusual, sir. Just ice and rocks, same as always." Taemin nodded. That was good. Boring was good. Boring meant no trouble. He had been commanding patrol ships for 8 years, and he preferred the boring days. The exciting days usually meant something had gone very wrong. Behind him, Wu Jin sat at the communication station, monitoring broadcasts from nearby human ships. There were hundreds of them in this sector, all conducting routine exercises. The Terran Defense Coalition was always training, always preparing. Some people thought it was wasteful to keep so many ships and soldiers ready during peacetime. Taemin did not agree. His grandfather had taught him that peace only lasted when you were strong enough to defend it. "Sir, I'm picking up something strange," Hana said suddenly. Her voice had changed, becoming sharper and more focused. Taemin walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" "There's a distortion near Sector 7. It's not natural. Something is bending light and energy around itself." Hana adjusted her controls, trying to get a clearer reading. "Whatever it is, it's big, ship-sized." "Could it be one of ours?" Taemin asked. Hana shook her head. "All our ships in this sector are accounted for. This signature doesn't match anything in our database." Taemin felt his pulse quicken. In all his years on patrol, he had never encountered anything truly unknown. Humans had explored much of their local space, but they had never found other intelligent life. Some scientists said they were alone. Others said they just hadn't looked far enough yet. "Wake up the crew," Taemin ordered. "Battle stations, and get me Jiwan from engineering." Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Men and women rushed to their positions, moving with practiced efficiency. Within 2 minutes, every station was fully staffed and ready. Jiwan's face appeared on a screen near Taemin's command chair. The engineering chief looked tired but alert. "What's going on, Commander?" "We have an unknown contact. I need the ship ready for anything." "Engines are at full capacity," Jiwan replied. "Weapon systems are green. We're ready." Taemin turned back to Hana. "Show me what we're dealing with." The main screen changed, displaying a 3-dimensional map of the surrounding space. In the center was the Dauntless, represented by a small blue triangle. Around it were dozens of other blue triangles, all human ships conducting their exercises. But there, off to one side, was a red dot that flickered and shifted. "It's watching us," Hana said quietly. "Look at its position. It has a perfect view of the entire exercise area." She was right. Whatever this unknown ship was, it had positioned itself where it could observe everything the human fleet was doing. That meant intelligence. That meant purpose. "Are they trying to hide?" Taemin asked. "Yes, sir. They're using some kind of cloaking technology. Very advanced. I can only detect them because our sensors are specifically designed to find distortions in space." Hana paused. "Commander, if we can barely see them, they might not know we've spotted them yet." Taemin considered this. First, contact with an alien species was supposed to follow specific protocols. There were procedures, diplomatic channels, carefully planned meetings, but those procedures assumed the aliens would announce themselves peacefully. They didn't cover what to do when you caught aliens spying on your military. "Wu Jin, send a priority message to Fleet Command. Tell them we have a possible first contact situation. Include all sensor data." "Yes, sir," Wu Jin replied, his fingers moving rapidly across his console. "What are your orders, Commander?" Hana asked. Taemin thought about it. If the alien ship was watching them, it meant they were gathering intelligence. Maybe they were scouts for a larger force. Maybe they were deciding whether humans were a threat or an opportunity. Either way, letting them leave without making contact seemed like a mistake. "Can we grab them?" Taemin asked. "Do we have anything?" that could prevent them from running? Hana's eyes widened slightly. You want to capture an alien ship? I want to talk to them, but I don't want them disappearing before we get the chance. Hana consulted her tactical systems. We have electromagnetic nets. They're designed for capturing debris or disabled ships. If I modify the frequency and boost the power, we might be able to disrupt their cloak and hold them in place long enough to establish communication. Do it. The Dauntless changed course, accelerating toward the hidden contact. The alien ship, still thinking it was invisible, didn't move. Taman watched the distance close on his screen. 1,000 kilometers. 500. 200. Launching net, Hana announced. From the Dauntless's forward launchers, a web of energy spread out like a fisherman's net. It expanded rapidly, covering a huge area of space. When it reached the alien ship's position, there was a brilliant flash of light. Suddenly, the alien vessel was visible. It was unlike anything Taman had ever seen. The ship was long and curved, almost organic-looking, with a surface that seemed to shimmer like crystal. It was beautiful and strange and definitely not human. We have them, Hana said. The net is disrupting their cloaking system and holding them in place. Wu Jin, open all communication channels, every frequency we know. Channels open, sir. Taemin took a deep breath. This was it. Humanity's first words to another intelligent species. Unknown vessel, this is Commander Taemin of the Terran Defense Coalition ship Dauntless. We mean you no harm. We detected your presence and wished to establish peaceful communication. For several long seconds, there was no response. Taemin wondered if they couldn't understand or if they were simply choosing not to answer. Then Wu Jin looked up with surprise on his face. Sir, we're receiving a reply. Audio only. They're speaking. They're speaking Korean. No, wait, it's changing. Now it's English, now Mandarin. I think they're using some kind of universal translator. Put it through. A voice filled the bridge. It was deep and resonant, with a strange musical quality. Human vessel. You have captured a scout ship of the Talvex Collective. This is an act of aggression. Taemin kept his voice calm. We have not fired weapons. We have not damaged your ship. We simply wish to talk. You were observing our fleet without permission. In human space, that makes you the aggressor. There was another pause. Then the alien voice spoke again, and this time it sounded less hostile. You detected our stealth systems? Yes. Impressive. Most species cannot. Another pause. Very well, we will talk. But if you harm this ship, you will make an enemy of the collective. We seek friends, not enemies, Taemin replied. Will you meet with us, face to face? The longest pause yet. Finally. We will meet. But we choose the location. Taemin smiled slightly. It was a start. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. He just hoped that these Talvex, whoever they were, would turn out to be the friendly kind of aliens, the kind that didn't start wars. The meeting station appeared in just 3 days. It was a simple structure, built quickly by both human and Talvex construction teams working on opposite sides. The humans wanted it near Neptune, close to their fleet. The Talvex agreed, though they seemed nervous about being so deep in human territory. Taemin floated through the station's central corridor, still getting used to the zero gravity. Beside him, Hana kept one hand on the guide rail, moving with careful precision. Behind them came Sang-ho, a senior diplomat who had been rushed out from Earth specifically for this meeting. Remember, Sang-ho said quietly, let me do most of the talking. First contact protocols are very specific about... He stopped talking as they entered the meeting chamber. The Talvex were already there. Taemin had seen pictures from the probe scans, but seeing them in person was different. The two aliens were enormous, nearly 8 feet tall even in the low gravity. Their skin looked like living crystal, catching the light and breaking it into rainbow patterns. They wore no clothes that Taemin could see, just some kind of device strapped to their chest that he guessed was a translator. The taller one stepped forward. His movements were graceful but somehow unsettling, like watching a statue come to life. I am Scout Captain Vren. This is my second officer, Kellis. We speak for the Talvex Collective in this matter. Sang-Ho bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. I am Sang-Ho, representing the Terran Defense Coalition and the human species. With me are Commander Taemin and Tactical Officer Hana, who initiated contact with your ship. Vren's head turned toward Taemin. The alien had eyes, but they were strange, multifaceted like an insect's. You are the one who captured our scout vessel. I prevented its escape, Taemin said carefully. There's a difference. Is there? Vren's voice carried something that might have been amusement. In my culture, trapping someone is the same as capturing them. In our culture, Hana said, stepping forward, spying on military exercises is considered hostile surveillance. Kelly spoke for the first time. His voice was higher than Vren's, almost musical. We meant no offense. The collective scouts many species. It is our way of understanding the galaxy. Understanding or evaluating? Sang-Ho asked. Vren tilted his head. Both. We must know who our neighbors are, whether they are potential friends or potential threats. He gestured at a table that had been set up in the center of the room. Shall we sit? Or do humans prefer to float? They settled around the table, magnetic boots keeping them in place. A human aide brought water for the diplomats. The Talvex declined refreshments. Let me be direct, Vren said. We have been observing your fleet for several of your weeks. What we see troubles us. Troubles you how? Sang-Ho asked. You have too many ships, too many soldiers. We counted over 15,000 vessels in your exercises, with crew totaling in the millions. Vren leaned forward. Why does your species maintain such a massive military force? Taemin exchanged glances with Hana. He had expected many questions, but not this one. Sang-Ho spoke carefully. Humanity has learned through difficult experience that peace requires strength. We keep our forces ready so that we never need to use them. That makes no sense, Kelly said. Maintaining such numbers must consume enormous resources. The cost, the logistics, the organization required. He shook his head in a very human-like gesture. In the collective, our entire military consists of perhaps 2,000 vessels and 50,000 warriors. And we control 17 star systems. There was a moment of stunned silence on the human side of the table. 2,000 ships? Hana repeated. For 17 systems? We need no more, Vren said. Our warriors are highly trained, our ships are technologically superior. We fight with precision, not numbers. A single Talvex strike force of 50 ships can conquer most species we encounter. Taemin tried to imagine defending Earth with just 50 ships. It was impossible. What happens if you face an enemy with more than 50 ships? It has never happened, Vren replied. Most civilized species maintain similar force sizes to our own. To do otherwise would be... He paused, searching for the right word. Barbaric. Wars are fought by warrior castes, by professionals, not by throwing entire populations into battle. I see, Sang-Ho said slowly. Captain Vren, I think there has been a fundamental misunderstanding. May I explain human history? Please. Over the next hour, Sang-Ho described humanity's path. He told them about the world wars, conflicts that had consumed entire continents and killed millions. He explained the Cold War, when two nations had built enough weapons to destroy their own planet several times over. He described the coalition conflicts that had followed, when humanity had nearly torn itself apart before finally learning to work together. The Talvex listened in what seemed like growing horror. You fight each other? Kellis asked. Your own species? We used to, Sang-Ho admitted. Not anymore. Not for 70 years. But we remember what it was like. We remember what happens when you're not prepared for war. And so you prepare for war constantly, Vren said. You maintain millions of soldiers, thousands of ships, all ready to fight. Ready to defend, Taemin corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Vren asked, echoing his earlier words. Hana pulled up a datapad and projected images into the air above the table. They showed human history in pictures and numbers, factories producing weapons, soldiers in training, ships being built by the hundreds. Every human knows someone who served in the military, she explained. It's part of our culture. We believe that if everyone shares the burden of defense, no one person has to carry too much. And if war comes, we want to be ready. But war hasn't come, Kelly's pointed out. You've had peace for decades. Why maintain such forces during peacetime? Because the moment you let your guard down is when danger strikes, Taemin said. It's better to have an army and not need it than to need an army and not have it. Vren stood up, turning away from the table. His crystalline skin flickered with colors that might have indicated emotion. This is deeply disturbing. A species that organizes millions for war, that builds weapons on industrial scales, that teaches its children that violence is inevitable. He turned back to face them. You must understand how this appears to us. The collective has encountered aggressive species before, species that glorify war and conquest. They always become problems. Sang-Ho stood as well. With respect, Captain Vren, you misunderstand us. We don't glorify war, we hate it. We hate it so much that we'll do anything to prevent it, including building forces large enough that no one dares attack us. Every ship in our fleet, every soldier in our army, is there to ensure that we never have to fight again. Deterrence, Vren said quietly. Exactly. Kellis touched Vren's arm, speaking in their own language. Vren responded, and for several minutes the two Talvex debated something the humans couldn't understand. Finally, Vren turned back to them. I need to see more, he said. I need to understand how you can possibly organize such massive forces without chaos. How you supply them, command them, keep them effective. The logistics alone should be impossible. They would be impossible for most species, Hana said. But humans have been solving these problems for centuries. We'll show you anything you want to see. Why? Vren asked suspiciously. Why reveal your military capabilities to potential enemies? Taemin smiled. Because we don't want you as enemies. We want you to understand that while we're strong, we're not aggressive. We want you to go back to your collective and tell them that humans are people they can work with, not people they need to fear. Or fight, Hana added quietly. Vren looked at each of them in turn. Very well. Show me your massive human army. Let me see these impossible logistics, and then I will decide what to tell the collective. As the meeting ended and they prepared to leave, Taemin couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The Talvex seemed genuinely disturbed by humanity's military size. He wondered what they would think when they saw the full scope of it. He wondered if showing them everything was a brilliant diplomatic move or a terrible mistake. Only time would tell. Admiral Kyung-soo was a man who understood the value of a good demonstration. When he heard that alien scouts wanted to see humanity's military capabilities, he immediately suggested they observe Operation Crimson Shield, the annual war games that involved nearly every branch of human defense forces. Are you certain this is wise? Sang-Ho asked as they prepared the observation deck. Showing them our full strength might frighten them. The Admiral, a veteran of the coalition conflicts with more gray hair than black, smiled slightly. Better they're frightened of us than dismissive of us. Fear breeds respect. Dismissal breeds war. Now, 3 days later, Vren and Kellis stood on the observation deck of the command carrier Indomitable, watching the largest coordinated military exercise in human history unfold before them. This is impossible, Kellis whispered, his translator barely picking up the words, before them. Spread across 3 solar systems were hundreds of thousands of ships. They moved in perfect coordination, their formations flowing like schools of fish. Battleships the size of cities worked alongside smaller destroyers and fighter craft. Supply ships moved between them in complex patterns, keeping everything running smoothly. How many ships are participating? Vren asked, his multifaceted eyes trying to track everything at once. Approximately 400,000 vessels. Admiral Kyung-soo replied calmly. This includes combat ships, support craft, medical frigates, and supply chains. We're simulating a full defensive operation against a theoretical invasion. Vren turned to stare at the Admiral. 400,000? That's 200 times the size of the collective's entire military. And this is just the ships currently in training, the Admiral said. We have reserves. On the main display, a planetary assault was beginning. Vren watched as thousands of dropships descended toward a simulated hostile world. They moved in waves, each wave covering the one before it, establishing safe landing zones and pushing forward. I want to see the ground operation, Vren said suddenly. Of course. The Admiral spoke to an aide, and soon they were watching a live feed from the planet's surface. Captain Bora led her mechanized battalion through rough terrain, her command mech stomping through a river without slowing. Behind her came 200 more mechs, each one carrying 3 soldiers and enough firepower to level a building. They moved together, responding to her orders with split-second timing. Target Building 7, Bora's voice came through the speakers. 3rd platoon suppress fire. 1st and 2nd platoons advance and secure. The mechs moved immediately. Some laid down covering fire while others rushed forward, their pilots working together like parts of a single machine. Within 5 minutes, the objective was secured with 0 casualties. She commands 200 units? Kellis asked. 200 mechs, the admiral corrected. 600 soldiers total. And she's just one captain. This exercise involves 15 million ground troops across 12 different landing zones. Vren's crystalline skin flickered rapidly, a sign that Sang-Ho had learned meant emotional distress. 15 million soldiers. For a training exercise. We believe in realistic preparation, the admiral said. The observation continued for hours. They watched naval formations practice complicated maneuvers. They saw supply chains function across light years of distance, delivering food, ammunition, and medical supplies to millions of people. They observed communication networks coordinating countless units without confusion or delay. Drenna, a Talvex analyst who had joined them, was taking notes on a handheld device. She had been quiet for most of the observation, but now she spoke up. This shouldn't be possible. The communication bandwidth alone required to coordinate this many units would overwhelm any system we know of. We use redundant networks, explained Wu Jin, who had joined them to help with communications. Each unit has multiple ways to receive and send orders. If one network fails, 3 others back it up. We learned a long time ago that in war, communication is everything. And your soldiers, Drenna continued, they follow orders so quickly. Don't they question? Don't they hesitate? They're trained, Wu Jin said simply. Every human in the military spends months learning to work as part of a team. We practice until these movements become automatic. Vren turned away from the displays. I need to see your production facilities. These ships, these mechs, these weapons, where do they come from? Admiral Kyung-soo nodded. I thought you might ask. Follow me. They took a shuttle to the orbital shipyards above Mars. The structures stretched for hundreds of kilometers, massive frameworks of metal and energy where ships were born. Engineer Subin met them at the docking port. She was young, barely 30, but she spoke with the confidence of someone who had built things her entire life. Welcome to Shipyard Theta 7. We're currently producing destroyer-class vessels. Would you like a tour? They followed her through the facility. Everywhere Vren looked, there was activity. Robots and humans worked side by side, assembling components with incredible speed. In one section, a ship's hull was being shaped. In another, engines were being installed. In a third, weapon systems were being calibrated. How long does it take to build one ship? Kellis asked. A destroyer like these? About 45 days from start to finish, Subin replied. 45 days. Vren couldn't hide his shock. In the collective, our shipwrights spend 3 years crafting a single vessel. Subin looked confused. 3 years for one ship? How do you replace losses in battle? We don't have losses often enough to worry about it, Vren said quietly. She led them to an observation window overlooking the main construction floor. Below, 7 ships were in various stages of completion. Workers moved between them, every motion purposeful and efficient. We have 250 facilities like this throughout human space, Subin explained. Together, they can produce about 50,000 ships per year. More if we need to. During the coalition conflicts, we were building 100,000 annually. Drenna's device nearly slipped from her hands. 100,000 ships. Every year. We had to, Subin said softly. It was that or lose. Humans learned a long time ago that wars are won by the side that can replace its losses faster than the enemy. Technology matters, skill matters, but ultimately, production capacity decides everything. Vren walked to the window and stared out at the shipyard. His reflection in the glass showed colors swirling across his crystalline skin. Blues and purples that Sang-Ho had learned meant deep thought. This changes everything, Vren said finally. The collective has assessed humanity as a typical developing species. Potentially useful as trade partners, but not significant in galactic terms. He turned to face Admiral Kyung-soo. We were wrong. You're not a typical species at all. We're survivors, the Admiral replied. Our world taught us harsh lessons. We learned them or we died. Your world, Kellis said. You speak of Earth as if it were an enemy. In many ways it was, Sang-Ho explained. Earth is a difficult planet. Harsh weather, natural disasters, diseases, predators, and we competed with each other for resources. We evolved fighting for everything. Fighting the environment, fighting other species, fighting ourselves. War isn't something we chose. It's something that shaped us. They returned to the Indomitable as the war games continued. Lieutenant Hyunwoo's fighter squadron danced through an asteroid field, practicing high-speed combat. Pilot Jae-hoon led his wing through a simulated minefield, his reflexes and his computer working together to navigate safely through dangers that would have destroyed any Talvex ship. Everywhere they looked, humans demonstrated capabilities that shouldn't exist, coordination that should be impossible, production capacity that should be beyond any single species. And through it all, they moved with calm efficiency, as if organizing millions of soldiers and thousands of ships was the most natural thing in the world. "I need to report this to the collective," Vren said as the day ended. "They need to know what you really are." "And what are we?" Admiral Kyung-soo asked. Vren was quiet for a long moment. "You are what happens when a species learns to treat war not as a sport or a test of honor, but as a problem to be solved with engineering and organization. You are what happens when survival requires perfection." "We're not perfect," the Admiral said. "No," Vren agreed, "but you're terrifying. And I mean that as the highest compliment." That night, as the aliens prepared to return to their scout ship, Taemin found Vren alone on an observation deck, staring out at the human fleet. "Question," Taemin said. "If you went back to your collective and told them to attack humanity, would they listen?" Vren was silent for so long that Taemin thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, they would listen. But I won't tell them that. I will tell them the truth, that humanity has built something unprecedented, and that we should be their friends because we never want to be their enemies." Taemin nodded slowly. "Good answer." "Commander," Vren said, turning to face him, "I have one more question. This massive force you've built, this impossible army, you say it's for defense. But what happens if someone attacks you anyway?" Taemin looked out at the fleet, thousands of ships gleaming in the darkness of space. "Then they find out why we built all this. And they regret it." The warning came 3 weeks after Vren returned to Talvex space. It arrived not through official channels, but through every sensor array humanity possessed, all screaming the same message: something massive was coming. Admiral Kyung-soo stood in the command center on Luna, watching the readings with growing concern. Beside him, Taemin studied the data streams, his face pale. "How many?" the Admiral asked quietly. "Preliminary scans suggest at least 50,000 objects," Taemin replied. "They're too far out for detailed analysis, but their trajectory is clear. They're heading toward both Talvex and human space. Not an invasion force, then. Just destruction." "Looks that way, sir." The Admiral pulled up a communication channel. Within seconds, Vren's face appeared on the screen. The Talvex captain looked as worried as a being with crystalline skin could look. "You've detected them," Vren said. "It wasn't a question. We have." "What are we dealing with?" "The Krev swarm." Vren's voice carried a weight of old fear. "They're a hive species. No individuals, no negotiation, no mercy. They consume worlds, strip them of resources, and move on. The collective has fought them for 3 centuries. "And you've held them off?" Taemin asked. "Until now, yes. But this—" Vren gestured at something off-screen. "This is different. We've never seen a swarm fleet this large. Our entire military couldn't possibly engage even a fraction of these numbers." Admiral Kyung-soo leaned forward. "What's your assessment, Captain? Can you hold them?" Vren was quiet for a moment. "No, if they come in force, the collective will fall. And then they'll turn to your space. Then we fight together," the Admiral said simply. "You would defend us? After we spied on you, questioned your methods, doubted your intentions? Your neighbors. And from what you've told me, the Krev don't negotiate. If we don't stop them at your border, we'll fight them at ours. Better to face them together." Relief flooded Vren's features. "I'll inform the Collective High Council immediately. They'll accept any aid you offer." "Good. Prepare your forces. We'll be there in 1 week." The channel closed and Taemin turned to the Admiral. 1 week? "Sir, mobilizing the fleet will take—" "Already begun," Admiral Kyung-soo interrupted. "I issued preliminary orders the moment we detected the swarm. Every reserve unit is being activated. Every shipyard is switching to emergency production. Every able soldier is being recalled to duty." Taemin watched as the command center burst into activity around them. Officers shouted orders. Displays showed military units across human space beginning to move. It was like watching a giant wake up, stretching limbs that had been resting. "How long will full mobilization take?" Taemin asked. "For our active forces, 2 days for our reserves." The Admiral smiled grimly. "Humanity can go from peace to war in 72 hours. It's one of the things we're best at. Across human space, the machine of war began to turn. Captain Bo-Ra received her orders while training recruits on Mars. Within hours, her entire division was loaded onto transport ships. Lieutenant Hyunwoo's ground forces assembled on Europa. Pilot Jae-hoon's fighter wing launched from the orbital platforms above Earth. In factories and shipyards, production shifted overnight. Civilian manufacturing plants converted to military production. Ships that had been carrying cargo were refitted with weapons. Students became soldiers. Doctors became combat medics. Engineers became armory specialists. Subin stood in shipyard Theta 7, watching her crews work at triple speed. "I need status reports on all vessels under construction," she called out. "Anything more than 70% complete gets priority. We finish them, we arm them, we send them out." Her assistant looked worried. "Some of these ships aren't fully tested. The safety protocols will have to wait. I'd rather send out a slightly unsafe ship than let the Krev overrun our allies." She pulled up a schematic on her display. "And pull the plans for the old Fortress-class carriers. We're bringing them out of mothballs. Those designs are 40 years old, and they work. Get them ready." On Earth, recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. People who had served years ago reported for duty. Teenagers lied about their ages to enlist. Retired veterans dusted off their old uniforms. The human instinct to protect their own kicked in, and millions answered the call. Wu Jin coordinated the massive communication network required to organize this mobilization. Every ship, every unit, every soldier needed to know where to go and what to do. The bandwidth requirements were staggering, but the systems humanity had built held steady. "This is incredible," he muttered, watching data flow across his screens. "We're moving 12 million people and 5,000 ships, and the system isn't even strained." His supervisor, an older woman named Ji-won who had moved from engineering to communications, nodded. "We designed these networks during the coalition conflicts. Back then we were moving 20 million people at a time. This is actually a small operation by historical standards." 6 days after the warning, the human fleet arrived at the Talvex border. What appeared first were the scouts, light, fast ships that mapped the battlefield. Then came the main force. Vren stood on his flagship's bridge, watching human ships emerge from faster-than-light travel. They came in groups of hundreds, then thousands, materializing in perfect formations. Battleships flanked by destroyers, carriers surrounded by fighter screens, supply vessels protected in the center of the formations. "How many?" Kellis asked beside him, his voice barely a whisper. "Still counting," their sensor officer replied. "Current estimate, 8,000 capital ships, 50,000 support vessels, 2 million soldiers on transport ship, and fighters? Unknown. Too many to count accurately." Admiral Kyung-soo's face appeared on the communication screen. "Captain Vren, we're here. Where do you need us?" Vren pulled up a tactical display showing the Krev approach. "The swarm will hit the Aurelia Nebula first. It's the only path through the asteroid fields in this region. If we can hold them there, we can protect both our territories. Then that's where we fight. Send us the coordinates." The combined fleet moved into position over the next 18 hours. The Talvex contributed their 50 finest warships and 5,000 elite warriors. They positioned themselves at strategic points ready to deliver precise strikes. The humans spread out in a massive defensive grid. Hundreds of ships covered every approach. Thousands more waited in reserve. Supply lines stretched back through 3 star systems, ensuring that ammunition, fuel, and reinforcements could flow constantly to the front lines. Captain Bo-Ra's ground forces prepared to defend the nebula's asteroid bases. Her mechs were dug into defensive positions, ready to repel any Krev landing forces. Lieutenant Hyunwoo's soldiers set up artillery on the larger asteroids, turning space rocks into fortresses. Pilot Jae-hoon's fighter wing practiced attack runs through the nebula's gas clouds. "It's going to be hell flying in there," he said over the squadron channel. "Zero visibility, sensor interference, and probably a million angry bugs trying to kill us. So just like training," his wingman replied. "Training was easier. Medical officer Yoon-ji and her teams set up field hospitals on every ship and base. They had supplies for tens of thousands of casualties and prayer that it wouldn't be enough. On the second day of positioning, the Krev swarm arrived. They came like a dark tide, blotting out the stars. Their bioships were twisted, organic things that moved with unsettling grace. Behind them came clouds of smaller creatures, fighter equivalents, that swarmed in millions. Tactical assessment, Admiral Kyungsu ordered, calmly. Approximately 80,000. Large bioships, his tactical officer reported. Estimated 15 million fighter-class organisms. They're spreading out to envelope our position. Beside the Admiral, Vren felt his blood run cold. This is beyond anything the collective has ever faced. Our strategies, our tactics, none of them account for numbers like this. Then it's lucky you have us, the Admiral replied. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All units, this is Admiral Kyungsu. The enemy outnumbers us. They're stronger than we expected. They probably think they've already won. He paused, letting his next words sink in. They've never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. Let's teach them. All ships, weapons free. Show them what happens when they threaten our friends. Across the human fleet, weapons powered up. Millions of soldiers checked their gear one last time. Fighter pilots gripped their controls. Gunners targeted the approaching swarm. And humanity, the species that had learned to wage war on an industrial scale, prepared to defend their new allies with everything they had. The Krev swarm, for all their numbers and all their hunger, was about to learn a hard lesson. Never threaten someone who has practiced war for their entire history. The Battle of the Aurelia Nebula was about to begin. The first wave hit like a hammer. Millions of Krev fighters swarmed forward, their organic bodies pulsing with bioluminescence. They moved as one organism, beautiful and terrifying in their coordination. Behind them, the larger bioships fired weapons that seemed to grow from their hulls. Acid projectiles, electromagnetic bursts, spears of hardened bone traveling at incredible speeds. The Talvex fleet met them with precision strikes. Vren's flagship, the Crystal Dawn, fired energy beams that cut through Krev fighters like a hot knife through butter. Kelly's commanded a destroyer that danced between asteroids, using the terrain to amplify their tactical advantage. Every shot the Talvex took was perfectly calculated, perfectly placed. But there were too many. For every Krev fighter the Talvex destroyed, 10 more took its place. We need to fall back, Kellis reported, his ship's shields flickering under sustained fire. We can't hold this position. Then the human fleet opened fire. If the Talvex fought like surgeons with scalpels, humans fought like avalanches. Thousands of ships fired simultaneously, their weapons creating walls of light and metal that tore through the Krev formation. There was no precision, no elegance, just overwhelming, relentless firepower. All batteries, continuous fire, Admiral Kyungsu ordered calmly. Don't let up. Pour it on them. Taemin stood beside him, coordinating the fleet's movements. Battle Group 7 is engaging the enemy right flank. Battle Group 12 is moving to support. Reserve squadrons are holding position. Good. Maintain the pressure. They want to swarm us. Let's see how they handle real numbers. Pilot Jae-hoon led his fighter wing into the chaos. His sensors were almost useless in the nebula's gas clouds, but he didn't need sensors for this fight. The enemy was everywhere. Break by pairs, he ordered his squadron. Don't try to dogfight them. Fire, reposition, fire again. Keep moving. His fighter shook as he opened fire, his weapons chewing through a cluster of Krev creatures. His wingman stayed close, covering his blind spots. Around them, thousands of human fighters did the same, moving, shooting, never staying still long enough to be pinned down. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. On the ground, or rather on the asteroids that served as ground, Captain Bora's mechs held the defensive line. Krev landing forces slammed into their positions like waves against rocks. Third platoon, concentrate fire on that cluster, Bora commanded, her mech's cannons roaring. First platoon, fall back to secondary positions. Second platoon, advance and secure that ridge. Her soldiers moved like parts of a machine, each one knowing their role. When one position became too hot, they fell back to another. When the enemy pushed too hard in one spot, reinforcements appeared from another. The Krev were relentless, but Bora's forces were everywhere. Always moving, always shooting, never giving the swarm a chance to concentrate their numbers. Lieutenant Hyunwoo's artillery batteries fired constantly, their shells arcing through the thin atmospheres of the asteroids and slamming into Krev formations. The ground shook with each impact. Hyunwoo didn't aim for individual targets, he aimed for areas, saturating zones with explosives and turning the battlefield into a killing ground. Back on the Crystal Dawn, Vren watched in amazement as the battle unfolded. The Talvex had been preparing to make a heroic last stand, to sell their lives dearly before being overrun. But the humans had changed everything. They're not even trying to match the Krev's coordination, Drenna observed. her analyst's mind working even in the middle of battle. They're just everywhere. Every position is defended. Every gap is covered. It's like fighting fog. It's doctrine, Kelly said, understanding dawning. Remember what they told us? They don't fight with elite units. They fight with everyone. The Krev have numbers, but humans have organization, and organization beats chaos. Vren opened a channel to Admiral Kyung-soo. Admiral, 3 of our ships are surrounded. They need immediate assistance. Already on it, the Admiral replied. 3 human battle groups, almost 2,000 ships, broke formation and smashed into the Krev surrounding the Talvex vessels. The bioships tried to reform, but there were too many human ships attacking from too many directions. Pull your people out. Taemin's voice cut in. We'll cover you. The Talvex ships retreated to safer positions, damaged but intact. Vren felt something he'd never felt before in battle. Relief. Real relief. They weren't alone. They didn't have to fight perfectly or die trying. The humans had their backs. The battle raged for hours, then days. The Krev kept coming, wave after wave, but the human defensive line held. When one ship was damaged, 2 more took its position. When ammunition ran low, supply ships appeared as if from nowhere, restocking the fleet even in the middle of combat. Wu Jin, coordinating communications from a command ship, monitored the data flows. Fleet logistics are holding steady, he reported. Medical ships report casualties within projected parameters. Supply lines are functioning at 93% efficiency. And the enemy? Admiral Kyung-soo asked. They're breaking. Look at Sector 4. The Admiral studied the tactical display. The Krev swarm for the first time was pulling back. Not retreating exactly, but consolidating, reforming. They'd expected to overwhelm the defenders. They'd expected their numbers to mean victory. They hadn't expected humans. Medical Officer Yoon-ji worked around the clock in her field hospital. Injured humans came through constantly. Burns, breaks, wounds from Krev acid weapons. She and her teams patched them up, sent them back to duty or shipped them to rear area hospitals. The Talvex wounded came through too, and Yoon-ji's teams treated them with the same care they gave their own. How are you doing this? A Talvex medic asked, watching Yoon-ji work on 3 patients simultaneously. We have 1 healer for every 100 warriors. You seem to have 1 for every 10 humans. Everyone gets medical training, Yoon-ji explained, not looking up from her work. Every soldier knows basic first aid. Every ship has a full medical team. We learned a long time ago that saving lives is as important as taking them. On the 3rd day, the Krev made one final massive push. Every bioship, every fighter, every organism they had left threw themselves at the human Talvex line. It was desperation. It was fury. It was everything they had. Captain Bora's position was overrun. We're falling back, she reported, her mech taking fire from all sides. Too many of them. We need reinforcements are landing now, a voice cut in. It was Hyunwoo. Hold for 2 more minutes. Bora's mechs fought desperately, giving ground step by step. Then the reinforcements arrived. 5,000 more soldiers, fresh from the transport ships, hitting the Krev from behind. The swarm, caught between 2 forces, collapsed. In space, pilot Jaehoon's squadron was down to half strength. His fighter was barely responding, damaged from a dozen near misses. But he kept flying, kept shooting, kept moving. All fighters, 1 more push, he gasped into his radio. Hit them with everything. Make it count. The surviving human fighters formed up and dove into the Krev formation. It was suicide. It was necessary. And somehow, impossibly, most of them survived because other squadrons appeared to cover their escape. That was the moment the Krev broke. Their losses were too heavy. Their swarm was too damaged. For creatures that operated on instinct and numbers, the calculation was simple. Staying meant extinction. The bioships turned and fled, their surviving fighters following. The massive swarm that had seemed unstoppable retreated into deep space, leaving the battlefield littered with the remains of their dead. On the crystal dawn, Vren stared at the sensor displays in silence. The humans had lost over 1,000 ships. Casualties numbered in the tens of thousands. By Talvex standards, it was a disaster, but by human standards, it was a victory, and they still had thousands of ships left, and more were coming from the reserves. Final count, Admiral Kyung-soo requested. Taemin checked the reports. 1,100 ships destroyed, 3,200 damaged, 47,000 casualties, 12,000 fatal. Talvex forces lost 15 ships. And the Krev? Preliminary estimates suggest we destroyed or disabled over 60,000 bioships. The survivors are fleeing at maximum speed. The Admiral nodded slowly. Send the recall order. All units return to defensive positions. Medical teams get priority for the wounded. Engineering teams start repairs. And someone get me a casualty report so I can write letters to families. Vren contacted the Admiral. You won. At terrible cost, but you won. We did what we had to do, the Admiral replied. Your people would have done the same. No, Vren said honestly. We would have died heroically. We would have fought with honor and skill. But we would have lost. You didn't fight with honor. You fought to win. And that made all the difference. A week later, after the wounded had been treated and the dead had been honored, Vren met with Admiral Kyung-soo one final time. The collective wishes to propose a formal alliance, Vren said. Not out of fear, though I won't deny your capabilities are intimidating. But because we understand now what humanity offers. You don't just fight. You endure. You adapt. You survive. Those are good qualities in allies. We accept, the Admiral said. And Captain Vren? Thank you for giving us the chance to prove that our massive army isn't a threat. It's a promise. A promise that we'll stand with our friends no matter what comes. Vren's crystalline skin shimmered with colors that meant respect.